Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I'm awfully glad that you joined us. Sorry about yesterday. Had to play a rerun. Had a little bit of car trouble. So I appreciate everybody that reached out there. But we are back and better than ever. We have a lot to talk about. I hope that you'll weigh in. Let me put my contact information up. I hope that you'll weigh in on all the issues of the day, such as the government open for business, of course, McCarthy, Gates, the Ali Frazier of our generation, I suppose. And also, I want to mention, I hope that you had an opportunity to see the Wine Glass Marathon preview over the weekend. I was really happy with that. I watched it on Saturday. I think it turned out really great. And congratulations to all the runners. I was seeing the pictures online. It was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful day for it. So we had a lot of coverage of the Wine Glass. And one of the people that was on the Wine Glass was Sheriff Jim Allard. He told us about all his time that he spent through the years working on the Wine Glass. And there is, I guess you would say, controversy going on in Steuben County. And I'm gonna get to that in just a moment. I'm gonna read the statement from Sheriff Allard, as well as a statement that I received after from Scott Van Etten. He's the chairman of the Steuben County Legislature. And the reason I mention this, I'm gonna take my contact information off. The reason I mention this is we are going to have Sheriff Allard on Thursday to address this. So that's a do not miss interview. That'll be right around 7 o'clock. We'll be talking to him about this. But I want to give you the background information that came out yesterday. So that's coming up in just a moment. On tomorrow's program, we'll have Dr. Coleman. He's going to tell us about the Unity in the Community Rally. It's a Support the Police rally, who Sheriff Allard will be a part of as well. That's at Wisner Park on October 7th from 1 till 2 p.m. So don't miss that as well. Also, on Friday, we're going to be talking to Elmira Mayor Dan Mandel. So we have a very busy week, but because I missed yesterday, I said today is just you and me. We've got too much to cover, too much to catch up on. So we have to get right to it. So we'll talk about, let's dive right into it. I better not, because these are lengthy pieces. So first, let's talk just quickly before I mention what's going on in Steuben County. Representative Matt Gaetz has formally filed the motion to oust Kevin McCarthy. I don't think this comes as a surprise. Sorry about my hair there, folks. All right, we're going to deal with it. Matt Gaetz has filed a motion to oust Kevin McCarthy as the House Speaker, as they are fighting over social media. McCarthy saying, "Bring it on," and Gaetz responded, "I just did." I don't know what to think about this infighting. I'd love to hear what you think about it, if I'm being honest, because to me, we have an amazing opportunity as a Republican Party right now. Biden's approval is really down. We could really be making some big moves, and it seems like all the attention, because the media loves this kind of thing, all the attention is on Matt Gaetz. I mean, the Democrats actually laughed at him when he filed this motion. It seems to be playing into the media's hands that are always looking for a way to demean Republicans, to badmouth Republicans. And that's what this seems, almost like a self-inflicted wound in some ways. Now, I know many of you may be not happy with McCarthy. So that's why I ask what your thoughts on this is. It just seems like, just like with the potential government shutdown, that didn't happen, of course, but the media uses that as a kind of a weapon against Republicans, and it paints them in a bad light. So that's why I want to hear from you on it. But when we come back from break, we're going to talk about Steuben County and what is happening there. If you were not aware, I think this is a very important story, and that's why I've asked Sheriff Allard to be on the program on Thursday. So we'll read his statement when I come back, and then we'll hear from Scott Van Etten, the chairman of the Steuben County Legislature. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street in Corning. I had a great opportunity to go to Hesselson's on Saturday for the big tent sale. Got some stuff for hunting season. Be all prepared. So here's what's going on in Steuben County. Yesterday I received this. I'm not sure if you've seen it elsewhere. I doubt it. It's quite a lengthy piece, but I think it's very important to bring up. It does get a little bit wonky, so bear with me. But this is the kind of local conversation that we need to have. And again, Sheriff Allard will be on the program on Thursday. So this is the statement that Sheriff Allard sent to the media. On Monday, September 25th, a divided Steuben County legislature passed two unprecedented resolutions with virtually no public input or debate that stripped me of the legal defense and indemnification against lawsuits that the county legislature unanimously gave me just 6 years ago, and imposed an unlawful requirement on me to purchase millions of dollars in liability insurance. One of these resolutions would prevent me from carrying out the duties of my office until I have personally purchased those millions of dollars in insurance. The other takes away the protection that the county gives to other officers and staff against being sued for performing their duties. The legislature offered me no reasons for this action. I won't speculate about their motives, except to say that this comes after years of moves by a handful of members of county government to undermine confidence in my administration. What I can say is that these resolutions don't serve any public safety interest, or any law enforcement interest, or any taxpayer interest. The resolutions place unlawful restrictions on an independent, elected office, punishing my administration for trying to carry out the duties and obligations we have under the law. More than that, they poison the good working relationship that this office has always had with its county level partners. Even setting aside the law, leaving aside the legal arguments about these resolutions, they just defy common sense in good government, which is why a statewide association of sheriffs is poised to come out in opposition to them as well. I did not ever expect I would have to file a legal action against the county, whose citizens I serve, and county officers that I have worked so well with over the years. It's not something that I ever would have wanted to do. I'll go further and say it makes me sad to do so. But I have to safeguard my office's ability to perform its law enforcement responsibilities to the citizens of this county. And with them in mind, I have filed a petition in Steuben County Supreme Court to enjoin these resolutions. Further details about the background to these resolutions and my application to stop them can be found in the petition and papers filed in Steuben County Supreme Court under index number E2023-0946CV. Like I said, it gets a little wonky, but this is very, very important. Again, if you're just joining us, this is our friend Sheriff Jim Allard. You'll see in that petition that these resolutions came soon after certain individuals in the county tried to end my ability to direct investigations within my own independent office, tried to end the sheriff's ability to identify and deal with complaints and possible misconduct in my own ranks. I'll leave you to review the details in the petition, but I think it's enough to say that my office repeatedly tried to have an open discussion with these individuals again and again to resolve any differences on this issue. What the county claims, without any explanation, is a conflict between policies. And again, those efforts were rejected in favor of rushing as quickly as possible to punish my office through these two resolutions. I'm still open to having that discussion, but in the meantime, I have an obligation to the residents of this county to continue to provide reliable and efficient law enforcement. And my office cannot do that with this threat of suspended leadership, liability, and unlawful financial demands hanging over it. I am optimistic that common sense will prevail here and that these resolutions will be set aside so that I and my office can focus on our law enforcement mission. Again, and that's respectfully submitted, Sheriff James L. Allard. So kind of a behind the scenes, I had heard ruminations that there was kind of this unprecedented conversation going on in an executive session. So when I received this yesterday, I knew right away that I had to bring it to you. Now, I'm going to read when we come back from break what, just to be fair, what the chairman of the Steuben County Legislature had to say in response. That's Scott Van Etten. We'll read that to you when we come back. Again, I know it's a little wonky, but this is very important, and that is why Sheriff Allard will be joining us on Thursday, and you can weigh in on this. Maybe you have some background, or maybe you've been following this as well. In this kind of unprecedented move, and at a time when law enforcement, we talk about it with Allard, we talked about it with Sheriff Schramm out of Chemung, when there's these attacks on the police, whether it be in the media, and unfortunately, according to this, it looks like now through legislative means. How appropriate that Dr. Coleman's having his Back the Blue, Support the Police rally coming up at Wisner Park on October 7th. So let's take a break. I will read that response when we come back. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. As I mentioned earlier, we're spending this time together, just you and I, so there is no M.A. Neal Financial Services section of the program this morning, but we always thank M.A. Neal Financial Services. Tomorrow, Dr. Coleman. On Thursday, Sheriff Allard, and then on Friday, Elmira Mayor Dan Mandel. So I read you the statement from Sheriff Allard, a friend of Frankly Speaking, was on just last week. So it's, right? Yeah, last week. So it's interesting to have him on again on Thursday, but I think this needs to be addressed. But I want to give you both sides. I think maybe you can see where I stand on this. But having said that, let me be fair in my reporting, and we're going to read the statement in response by Scott Van Etten. He is the chairman of the Steuben County Legislature. And he writes, today, meaning yesterday, this came out yesterday, breaking news. Today, Sheriff Allard released a public statement which requires a response for the benefit of Steuben County taxpayers. In New York State, counties provide liability insurance coverage to a sheriff through the specific passage of a local law. The Steuben County Legislature passed such a local law in 2017. Recently, and unfortunately, both actions and inactions of the sheriff has necessitated this to be reevaluated. Ultimately, after careful review, the legislature voted to rescind their defense and liability coverage last week. The county must ensure that the laws of New York State that protect our employees from harassment and discrimination are enforced across all departments, including the sheriff's office. To ignore or do otherwise would be a disservice to our staff and open the county taxpayers to tremendous liability. Any subsequent lawsuit would be a cost paid by our residents. Since at least the end of June, the sheriff has been aware of the serious concerns of the county, and instead of taking steps to find compliance with state law, the county has been met with half-truths, deflection, and legal threats. To claim no explanation has been given is patently false and is a public statement the sheriff can now not take back. The difficult decision was not made overnight. It has been actively discussed since the beginning of July, and the county has held out hope for it to be resolved. It is unfortunate the sheriff places us in this position of both responding to his public statement and answering his civil litigation. These resolutions have no financial or operational impact upon the men and women in uniform who faithfully serve our county. The resolutions impact Sheriff Allard alone. If critical workplace laws, regulations, and practices aren't adhered to within his office, it's the sheriff himself that bears the liability, not the taxpayer of Steuben County. So that is the response to that statement. Now, I know that was a little wonky, but I wanted to get you up to date. Not wonky, that's not the right word, but there's a lot to dissect there. That's why I'm so happy that Sheriff Allard will be on the program on Thursday. But I wanted to pass that along to you if you maybe didn't have an opportunity to hear this story. I don't believe we touched on it in our interview, though we did have a little bit of a conversation about it at one point, I believe. So a lot of things going on behind the scenes. We will keep you updated on that. So we started with local. We'll get away from that because I know we have a lot of Chemung County residents as well that watch and from all over. But I thought that was a very, very important local story, and we talk about getting involved in the community. We talk about this, the low morale when it comes to police officers. So this all ties in together. But let's move on. And again, you can weigh in at any time, especially on this issue. If you have any questions about it, concerns about it, please weigh in. Okay, so Matt Gaetz, as I said, formally makes his move to oust Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the Democrat side of the House, in what would be a bad sign for Gaetz because he has to have some Democrats to go along with this, erupted in laughter as Gaetz left the floor after making his motion. As I said Kevin McCarthy tweeting out, or what do you say now? Xing out? I don't even know. Bring it on. And Matt Gaetz responded in kind of a childish fashion. Just did. No speaker has ever been ousted through the passage of a resolution to remove them, but threats over the use of what's known as a motion to vacate can be a powerful way to apply pressure to a speaker. I think the PR of this, too, I'm just not a fan of this, if I'm being honest. Now, I would like to hear what your thoughts are. Maybe you're saying, I didn't like what McCarthy did to keep the government open. Is Matt Gaetz, I got to ask this question, is he doing it for what he feels is the right motive, or is he doing it to get Matt Gaetz more attention? Now, that's kind of Kevin McCarthy's thought on it, saying on Meet the Press, something to the extent, I'm paraphrasing here, that he's not doing this for any other reason but to get on television. And there has been speculation that Matt Gaetz wants to run for governor of Florida. So what is this really all about? Now, I'm not going to go through all the procedural steps that this is going to involve, because that really gets wonky. But it does say that McCarthy may need to get some Democrat support. Gaetz said Monday that he has enough Republicans to either push McCarthy from the speakership or make him cut a deal with Democrats to remain in power. I think others have said it. I think it was maybe Newt Gingrich or somebody else. I don't remember. Yeah, that's from CNN. But that this is not what we need to be doing as Republicans right now, at a time when we really should be celebrating victories and looking at polling number and really looking at some positive things in our future. And instead, the media now has an opportunity to focus on the dysfunction of the Republican Party and focus on the potential shutdown. Of course, that went away, so now they can focus on Gaetz. And the New York Post editorial board, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Has Congress gone totally mad and holding up aid for Ukraine? Because that was a lot of the issue with the shutdown. There's a certain faction of Republicans that don't want to see more aid go to Ukraine. Now, I think I don't want to say the majority. I think most Republicans would say, well, it can't be a blank check. This would be my position. We have to look to where the money is going, but we still need to support Ukraine. But then there's this faction that says, no, enough is enough. We don't want to run essentially a proxy war, or some are now calling it an endless war. But the New York Post editorial board says Congress has gone crazy because of this. And it isn't a typical Republican stance to say no funding for this. Are lawmakers out of their mind? They asked the question. President Biden has been wrong about nearly everything, even his too little, too late approach to Ukraine. But he was certainly right Sunday to insist Congress stop playing games and okay more cash pronto. And they go through, and I just ask the question, do you believe we should be sending more money to Ukraine? The New York Post editorial board says, as the world's sole superpower, it's up to America to prevent what would be one of history's biggest disasters, letting Russia win. Keep that aid flowing. So this all ties in together. I know we're covering a lot, folks. We haven't even talked about Bowman pulling the old fire alarm trick. We haven't had a chance. Maybe we'll talk about that when we come back, but I do have to take a short break. So stay with us. We're having fun this morning on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. There we go. I could tell my audio wasn't going to play, so I put up the information about the book sale. I guess I didn't have to take that away. I know it was kind of weird just staring at me, staring off into the distance. But there is the Steuben County Library book sale. Look forward to that every year. It has started, as you can see. It is kicked off, but Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. It's cheaper as the days go by, but I hope that everybody can make it. But don't forget, it's cash or checks only. It's very important, okay? All right, let's get back to the topics. I don't want to talk too much about Bowman, Congressman Bowman, but I do have to mention it. So not only does he pull this fire alarm, and then for some I guess his excuse is he thought it was a way to get through a door or something. But then they release a memo, basically a talking point, to tell his fellow Democrats, well, this is what you say when asked about him pulling the fire alarm. And in that talking point, he compared Republicans in the House to Nazis. So then, all this damage control, then he has to basically throw one of his staff, one of his aides, under the bus by saying, no, I didn't write this. I never even approved this. This is my first time seeing it. Okay, there we go. Oh, by the way, I did receive this comment. I wanted to mention it because this has, and I think this is a good point when we talk about aid to Ukraine, before we keep talking about Bowman. Let me take that off the screen. This is what Kevin McCarthy is doing. He's tying in the Ukraine aid to money being spent on our border. So this viewer says we need money spent on our border, not Ukraine. And I think that's a fair point. I think that is a point that a lot of people are making. I don't think we necessarily, I don't think it's all or nothing scenario. I know, folks, I know we're broke as a country. Don't get me wrong. I understand the financial impact. I just don't know when it comes to, again, I want to see more checks and balances into where the money's going to Ukraine. But having said that, I don't like the thought of completely cutting that off. But I do agree with that sentiment that we have to close our border. And did you see Hochul backtracked? What a wimp. So she was tough talking, basically saying that, the border can't stay open. It's hurting us. And then the Biden administration must have gave her a call. And now she's saying, maybe we'll get to that later. But anyway, I keep going on tangents because there's so much to talk about. So Bowman now disavows the talking point, attacking, quote, Nazi members of the GOP. If you're not familiar with Jamal Bowman, Democrat from New York, representative, he is a part of the squad. That one time AOC even had to stop him. Who was he yelling at? Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think? Or maybe it was Boebert. I can't remember. To the point where AOC was the level-headed one saying, oh, come on, let's get out of here. But he said in a statement, I'm embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm, mistakenly thinking it would open the door. I regret this and sincerely apologize for any confusion this caused. I have to say, and this has been said by a lot of people, so I don't think I'm being brilliant by saying nothing burger or something like that. But he's a middle school principal. That's what he ran on. And he doesn't know about the old pull the fire alarm trick? Come on. But on Monday, Bowman's office circulated a memo to his Democrat colleagues urging them to defend him publicly with suggested arguments as Republicans continue to demand his expulsion. One proposed talking point in the memo titled, quote, Messaging Guidance, supporting Congressman Jamil Bowman after accidental fire alarm, targeted, quote, Nazi members of the GOP. I believe Congressman Bowman, this is the talking point. And when you say, wow, are there talking points going around? And because everybody seems to be saying the same thing. Yes, they're and this isn't like breaking news. We all know this. So they send out to their colleagues, this is what we want you to say. And the colleagues being, good soldiers saying, well, I'm a Democrat, so I'll use their talking points. But anyway, I believe Congressman Bowman when he says this was an accident. Republicans need to instead focus their energy on the Nazi members of their party before anything else. So then he tried to walk that back. This is just a PR disaster. And he threw his staff under the bus. I just became aware that in our messaging guidance, there was inappropriate use of the term Nazi without my consent. I condemn the use of the term Nazi out of its precise definition. It is important to specify the term Nazi to refer to members of the Nazi Party and neo-Nazis. And then he was, when he was outside his office, he said, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention. I was literally just in a rush to go vote, man. Come on. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's almost predictable. He is a kind of a, what's a term that they would use? Kind of a flamethrower. He does, like I said, yelling at the other representative and some of his hyperbolic speeches, things like that. So I think most people, when they see the timing of pulling this fire alarm, it's not it's hard to accept him at his word. How about that? It's hard to accept him at his word. Representative Nicole Malliotakis, Republican from New York, unveiled a resolution to expel Bowman as a result of this. This is the United States Congress. It's not a New York City public high school. And of all people, Jamal Bowman knows the old fire alarm trick. See, a lot of people are saying this because he was a high school principal. He was actually middle school, but that's okay. And quite frankly, when he was the high school principal, there was serious ramifications if a student were to do that, including expulsion. And that's a fair point. Now, AOC and other members of the squad have defended him. But McCarthy saying this should not go without punishment. This is an embarrassment. So it is back and forth. Kind of an odd story, as I had that piece from Axios saying the damage control is just a nightmare. A lot of people not happy with the attention that this is bringing, the negative attention. There's also Representative Lisa McClain is circulating censor resolutions that would also strip Bowman of his committee assignments and direct the Ethics Committee to open an investigation into him, according to a copy of the text viewed by Axios. By the way, the resolution that Nicole Malliotakis put out has 12 GOP co-sponsors. So there you are. There's a quick update on that. We're going to get away from that. I see that Gavin Newsom, before we go to break, he did appoint a Maryland resident to that California Senate seat since the passing of Dianne Feinstein. Well, we'll talk about that when we get back. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm Frank Hague. I'm broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Still cleaning up from all the fun at the Wine Glass Marathon. And hey, I want to thank Perry True for sending in a wave. Hi, Perry. Thank you for the wave. We've got quite a few waves going this morning, for some in person, some virtual. So keep them coming in. So yes, Gavin Newsom. There's a really interesting piece I'm going to get to in just a second about Gavin Newsom and the potential presidential run. But LaFonza Butler is now, is going to take the seat and replace recently deceased Democrat Senator Dianne Feinstein. But a lot of people are saying, wait a minute, Miss Butler isn't even a California resident. It is very weird. So there's some criticism there, and rightfully so. Now, if you don't know a lot about LaFonza Butler, she's the president of Emily's List, which works to elect women in favor of abortion rights to public office. It is not, as far as I know, has not been stated yet if she is going to also run for that seat or if this is just the temporary until election. California law permits the governor to appoint a senator until the next election, due to take place in 2024. So it's actually next year. So no word yet if she plans on running for a full term. Butler previously worked in California on the presidential campaigns of Harris and Hillary Clinton. However, questions have been raised over her choice because it shows that she lives in Maryland. Online resources that has since been scrubbed from her social media account. But anyway, so that's just an update so you know what's going on there. Because, of course, there was some speculation that maybe he would see if Harris wanted it, so then they could get a different VP that maybe strengthens the ticket for Biden, or maybe presents a situation where Biden says, you know what, I'm out. Harris is in the Senate again, and, you know, whoever runs. And that's why I tied in with Gavin Newsom, who got to make that decision. This is a really interesting piece. Will Gavin Newsom copy Trump and overthrow the Democrat elite? Daniel McCarthy writes this, and he says, Gavin Newsom wants to be Donald Trump. 8 years ago, Trump took stock of the Republican Party and found it ripe for conquest. Who would stand against him? The Bush dynasty elected 2 presidents, yet both left office with a GOP in retreat. If Jeb Bush seemed the inevitable nominee, I want to highlight, he didn't seem the inevitable nominee. The same people that are trying to get Youngkin in there are the same ones that told us that Jeb is the only way we could defeat Hillary Clinton. So just keep that in mind. It's kind of the the pundit class, like the Bill Kristol, who got every single thing and every prediction wrong about the election, but still somehow can go on newscasts and be confident in his predictions. I find it very, very odd. But it was the Bill Kristols of the world that were telling us the only way we can win is with Jeb Bush. But I'll continue. So if Jeb Bush seemed the inevitable nominee for a few weeks or months in 2015, that was only a sign of how stagnant the party has become. And I would agree with that. And then he references Daniel McCarthy, something that I do quite frequently on this program. You know, it's the same with it's John McCain's turn. Oh, it's Mitt Romney's turn. These are the only people that can win. And of course, we see what happens there. But Daniel McCarthy says Newsom is every bit as ambitious as Trump. And when the California governor sizes up the Democrats, he perceives as much weakness as Trump sensed in yesteryear's GOP. Now, again, I think this is really interesting because if you recall, and I mentioned this, Gavin Newsom is going to debate Governor DeSantis on Fox. So he's got that, the spotlight on him. Now, maybe this just means in 2028. But some have thought, well, what if Biden decides, he doesn't want to run again? Because it is Biden's choice. No matter what anybody says, no Democrat can say he can't run. Yeah, and there are no real viable opponents. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is technically in there, and he's getting good numbers, but come on. And also, did you see that he thinks if he runs Libertarian, that it will actually take more votes away from Trump? That's what his people think. Now, a lot of Democrats are scared if he runs, thinking that they'll take away votes from a very unpopular incumbent president in Biden. But behind the scenes, Kennedy believes, or at least his team believes, that he would be taking votes from Trump. But anyway, I know. It's one of those mornings where I'm going on a lot of tangents. Please forgive me. So Newsom, like Trump, is charismatic and telegenic. This, again, Daniel McCarthy. He's a showman who's booked a national spotlight, and I mentioned that with the debate with Ron DeSantis. And he knows that no matter how well DeSantis performs, the media and the media other than Fox will favor the Democrat. Even Trump will have every incentive to declare Newsom the winner and his intra-party rival DeSantis the loser. When Trump cast his eye on the 2015 Republican Party, he saw not a coherent whole that could resist a hostile takeover, but a fragmented coalition that could be picked off piece by piece by a master of politics, transactional politics. Newsom sees the same in today's Democrat Party. His appointment, of LaFonza Butler to fill the U.S. Senate seat left vacant by Feinstein's death shows just how strategically transactional the governor is. Butler is a black lesbian who's been at the forefront of Democrats' efforts to liberalize abortion policy through her leadership of Emily's List. By placing her in the Senate, Newsom strengthens his identity politics credentials should he, a white man, choose to challenge Kamala Harris, a black woman, for the Democrat succession. Newsom is looking ahead to 2028, but he also has his eye on next year should President Biden, who turns 81 next month, withdraw from the race or have a health issue or whatever. So again, I just find that to be a very interesting take on it, something that we've really said here on the program numerous times. Daniel McCarthy just putting it into writing that Newsom is working behind the scenes, but how soon? Because Biden would have to make the decision if he's not going to run. Kind of the unofficial date would be December, because the candidates still have to get on the state ballot. It's kind of a logistical nightmare. So he would have to make that decision by December if he's not going to run. So there you go. I just wanted to bring that up about Newsom and echo basically a talking point that we've said numerous times in the past. So keep those emails coming in. Keep those waves coming in. We've got to take another short break, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. The Wall Street Journal, and we do have to take another short break because I'm running long. I'm going on a lot of tangents this morning. But the Wall Street Journal, and again, I'm interested when the media does this, when they're somewhat turning on Biden. They've got to be careful, because if Biden does ultimately run, which it looks like he is, they can't be seen as having ever attacked him in any way. But Democrats still publicly back Biden for 2024. Privately, their fears are growing. Polls show warning signs for the incumbent, but few Democrats see a viable plan B. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Polls have consistently shown that most voters, including the majority of Democrats, don't think Biden should run in 2024. Age, his fitness for office, leadership. We've been through the polls numerous times on this program. I don't have to go through the numbers again. But multiple surveys showing Biden and Trump essentially tied in hypothetical matchups. The fretting within the party has increased as the window for a primary challenge closes before the start of the new year. And you've got things like the auto worker strike, Ukraine, obviously impeachment inquiry, et cetera, et cetera. So they interviewed some Democrats for this piece and, quote, "It is a little bit like your grandfather running the company. And you know that he's at a point now where the heirs could suffer value if we don't change management at the top." That's Philip Levine, a former Democrat mayor of Miami Beach. And this is very difficult. How do we get Grandpa to relinquish the CEO role? Other Democrats who would only echo those sentiments in private said one member of the Democrat National Committee, quote, "It would be irresponsible for us to not be concerned at this point. People can be hopeful about what the result is going to be, but we don't have any evidence as to why we should be hopeful. The polling is bad. The approval ratings are bad. We know about concerns about both the president's age and about the vice president if she were to take over." Very interesting. Turning on Harris. Well, Harris, many people forget this. Harris never received one vote in the primary. She didn't make it that far. She had one okay debate performance, and her biggest line, and the reason everybody started paying attention to her, is because she literally criticized her new boss, her boss now, Joe Biden, of being a racist. But I'll continue with this anonymous, speaking on anonymity, this DNC member. "I want to see Bidenism continue, but I think the best way to make sure that happens is to perhaps have a different candidate than Joe Biden." Now, some Democrats are saying, as I've mentioned, that this debate, this conversation is moot. Barring a health scare or other unforeseen circumstances, Biden isn't quitting the race, and no prominent Democrats have challenged him for the nomination. Yes, as former Congressman Joe Semplinsky said, it's his decision to make. And if he says he's running, no matter what they're talking about behind the scenes. Okay, let's get away from that. Take another break. We're going to start wrapping things up. We got 2 more segments, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you for joining us. We have to take another break pretty quickly here, but I wanted to mention, just to keep you updated on all of the information, Hunter Biden is scheduled to appear in federal court in Wilmington, Delaware, today to be arraigned on firearm charges brought by special counsel David Wise. The hearing, though a procedural part of any criminal case, will mark an extraordinary moment. The first time that a child of a sitting president will appear in court to fight criminal charges. This is where he has the opportunity to either plead guilty or not guilty, and prosecutors may also ask for certain conditions of his release to be set in place while he awaits trial. Speaking of trial, before we go to break, former President Donald Trump showed up at a Manhattan courtroom for the opening day of the New York civil case against him and his company, attacking the judge in the case. Some are saying, and this is more on the Democrat side, some saying that he's really in trouble with this case, but he's using it as almost a campaign rally, because he did speak to the press after. He has been making a lot of statements regarding this. And so Jeremy Erb from CNN says Trump turns the courtroom into a campaign stop. Well, Trump, speaking to the press, said this has to do with election interference, plain and simple. They're trying to damage me so I don't do as well as I'm going in the as I'm doing in the election. Excuse me. Here's what I think is interesting. It drives me crazy because the Attorney General was seen just staring and glaring. They made a big deal about this on some of the news outlets, glaring at the president, former president, as he was in trial. The optics of her doing that, and of course the pictures being taken, which makes it look even more political. We got to take a break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Get ready, buckle in. We're going to go through a lot right here at the end. But like I was mentioning before break, so it's Attorney General Letitia James. They love that she was just staring and angrily looking at Trump. But remember, she ran on the fact that she was going to go after Trump. This is her crowning achievement, if you will, because this makes her a star in the Democrat Party. And apparently, at least with that kind of hokey, not PR stunt, but political stunt of just staring at him, she must be thinking she wants to run for a bigger office at some point. It was cringeworthy, in my opinion, especially the way the media covered it. But Donald Trump called on a Democrat operative judge to be disbarred. This is a judge that should be disbarred. This is a judge that should be out of office. This is a judge that some people say could be charged criminally for what he's doing. He's interfering with an election, and it's a disgrace. Calling him a Democrat judge from the clubhouses. And I do think he makes a good point, as we talk so often about the problems in New York, and specifically the city. He said, and we're wasting our time on this trial with a Democrat judge from the clubhouses. It's a disgrace. They ought to look for the murderers of the killers that are all over New York, killing people. And the violent crime that's been committed in our city and our state is disgraceful. And we're going to be here for months with a judge that already made up his mind. It's ridiculous. He's a Democrat judge. He's an operative. And it's ridiculous. But other than that, things went very well. But he raises a very good point. It is going to be months. You know what that does for the campaign, etc. But he also, then he kind of honed in on Attorney General Letitia James, saying businesses are fleeing New York. And you ought to go after this Attorney General because she's turning off everybody from coming in. I don't know if you take a look at the outflow of business, we talk about a lot on this program. Businesses are fleeing New York because of horrible, horrible Attorney General and judges like we have. I don't think the people of this country are going to stand for it. This is a disgrace, and you ought to go after this Attorney General. When you have a radical left Attorney General like Letitia James, who's a disgrace to our country, who got elected on the fact that she's going to, quote, take down President Trump, we're going to take him down. She knew nothing about me, but she got elected on that basis, hence the photo op where she wanted to be seen glaring at the former president. The former president did seem happy with a statement that the judge made about concerning statute of limitations, saying the last 5 minutes was outstanding because the judge essentially conceded that the statute of limitations that we won at the Court of Appeals is in effect. Therefore, about 80% of his case is over. Okay. I think we are out of time. Yeah. Oh, wow. We are out of time. Okay. Yep. Hey, thanks to everybody who joined us. Thanks for all the waves. Thanks for all the comments. Really appreciate it. Tomorrow on the program, Dr. Coleman, so please tune in for that. We're going to talk about the Support the Police rally at Wisner Park, October 7th from 1 to 2. So, I can't believe how fast that went. Feels good to be back in the saddle. We will be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we'll see you then.